Calls are coming for the President and Board of New Zealand Football to resign. This is after a damning report into the governing body's conduct and culture was released today. The independent review was headed by lawyer Philippa Muir, and it found that former Football Ferns head coach Andreas Heraf breached guidelines on bullying and harassment. The report also slammed New Zealand football for ignoring player complaints and failing to act. Our sports reporter Clay Wilson was at today's press conference when all these things were talked about, and joins us now in the studio. Thanks for joining us, Clay.
No worries.
It's not a pretty picture that's been painted here, and it's not just about Andreas Heraf, is it?
No, absolutely not. It's hard to imagine these findings could have been more damning of Heraf, but also the NZF board, the executive committee. While Philippa Muir said some of Heraf's coaching could be characterised as robust, she did go on to list a number of things. She said he breached the NZF Code of Conduct, the Human Resources Policy on Harassment, and WorkSafe NZ bullying guidelines. She said he failed to respect the rights, dignity and worth of some of the players, and perhaps most damning, she said he offended, humiliated and intimidated some of the players during his time in charge. But Philippa Muir also said that Heraf's not totally to blame. She said NZF definitely has shared responsibility in this. She said they didn't investigate concerns that were raised after the Spain tour and actually after the Thailand tour late last year. Derek Shaw, you spoke to him earlier, he says that they didn't know about those concerns, but she says they were perhaps ignored or put to the side somewhat. She also said that they didn't sufficiently support Heraf when he came into the role, specifically when he took over the Football Ferns role, obviously was in the technical director role and then took over the Football Ferns and wasn't really given the support to really go into that role and do a good job of it.
Right, yes, we heard complaints before about the New Zealand football's recruitment process, and that Andreas Heraf had not had any experience at that level and with the women's group. I did speak to Derek Shaw before, and he seemed to be passing the buck to his management, particularly around the recruitment issues, but also, as you said, the lack of responding to the complaints when they were raised. What did you make of his defence tonight?
Yeah, a lot of his comments seemed very pre-prepared. He wasn't really willing to go out on a limb too much with some of his statements. I mean, they've definitely apologised for this, and he said they want to meet with the players and apologise to them face to face. But I don't know, that they said they've accepted the report, they're going to adopt all the recommendations, but whether Shaw or any of his board cohorts I guess stand to lose their positions over this, they've obviously overseen a lot of what's going on here. It's a very damning report. Whether they survive this process, I guess, remains to be seen, but it seems hard that at least one or two of them aren't going to fall by the wayside here.
Yeah, and look, there's 22 recommendations, there's a lot in there. What do you see as the salient points? What needs to be attacked first?
Yeah, well, 22 is a lot, so there's a lot to get through. I guess I can run through the main points. The first one was to apologise. So they've obviously done that to get some feedback from the players and also offer them counselling if they want it as a result of what's happened. They said the recruitment process within New Zealand football needs to be much better. There basically doesn't exist. Heraf got the job as the Football Ferns coach without any recruitment process. No one else was looked at or considered for the role. Set up a welfare committee, high performance committee, player complaints process, which doesn't exist for the elite teams. But also there was a big focus placed on the emphasis on diversity and including more female female staff at New Zealand football. Just 21% currently of employees at New Zealand football are female, and none of those are in senior management. So there's a perception, Muir said, and this was quite damning, she said the organisation was something of a boys' club. I know you touched on that with Derek Shaw, and he was pretty non-committal about that. So I guess, and also they're saying, in terms of a focus on female coaches, that needs to be developed a lot more. A lot of the Football Ferns coaches in recent decades, have been male. So I guess mid to long term, getting a female in that role alleviates some of the potential problems that can arise in this situation.
Great, yeah, and Sam Malcolmson, of course, also referred to that, saying that a lot of the people, former players and people around the team, should really be called on to get more involved in there. So interesting that you're saying the same thing. Thank you for the update. Clay Wilson there on the latest with New Zealand football and their response to that damning report that came out today. Interesting to note that Derek Shaw did leave the door open to some resignations. He said if New Zealand football thought it was a good thing to do, he did concede that, so we may have more on that in the coming days.